Hello my wonderful sewhorts and welcome back. This is the third and final video for the Tam-o'Shanter Crochet-Along. When we left off last time we had just finished the last part of the tip, which was bringing it back in to form the turn under, and now the only part that's left to crochet is the band. So once again we're just going to hop right on in. The band is really easy. It's honestly the easiest part of this whole thing, and it is just going to be single crochet. That's it. So each star stitch from the row below is going to get two single crochets, because each one has 2 loops. But as always, we're going to start with a chain 2 and then just single crochet into every single loop. So you'll have twice as many single crochet stitches in the band as you had in your last row of star stitches. And as you go through, I forgot to mark where I started, so you can see me backing up a little bit. But as you go through, you can also start taking out the extra stitch markers for where we were doing our decreases, because we don't need them anymore. So basically, as I said, single crochet, what will feel like forever, but what we're aiming for is about 2 to 2.5 inches of single crochet, and for me that was 10 rows. So here are my last few stitches of my row 10 for my band, and I'm going to pause here just to double check, and as you can see, this is 2 inches. I could do another row or 2 if I wanted, but I don't feel like it. I think that this is going to be a good size. As I said, you want 2 to 2.5 inches. You can do a little wider if you want a slightly wider band, but if this feels huge and super wide, don't worry, we're going to fold it over in a moment and double it up. Because this is the end of my crocheting, I am going to, with that last loop, tie off my yarn. I am not going to cut it, however. I am actually going to measure out a tail. I'm just estimating 3 or 4 times the length of what my band is. It's probably too much. Actually, I know it's too much, but I would rather not have to tie off and add more yarn in as I sew my brim, so better to have the extra. As you can see, I'm cutting it off with my super long tail, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a large yarn needle and I am going to sew my band to itself. Once I have my yarn threaded onto my needle, I'm going to turn my hat inside out, because that will make this so much easier to sew. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold my band in half, and I am going to be whip stitching my finished edge to the first row of single crochet I did, and I'm going to be stitching through this horizontal loop, which I am pointing out right here. And it's nice and easy, a 1-to-1 straight up. No twisting, no stretching, no having to guess or ease or anything. The joy of, plain old single crochet. So all I'm going to do to sew my band is I'm going to go through that loop that I mentioned, and then I'm going to go under both loops, both threads, both sides of the yarn, for the finished edge of my crochet. And I am just going to whip stitch this way the entire way around my band. What this does is this gives me a thicker, sturdier band. It's got a little more stiffness to it, shall we say. It will stretch somewhat, but it won't stretch quite as much if it were just a single layer of crochet, and it just gives the whole tam a sturdier base to sit on and to sit around your head. So one thing I do want to point out, as I am stitching, I am not pulling this super tight because I do still want it to have a little bit of stretch. So I am keeping this a fairly gentle whip stitch and not pulling it super tight as I go along. Once I am done stitching my band the whole way around, I'm going to tie off my yarn end, and then I'm going to hide the ends, work the ends in the same way I would anything else. And while I have the hat turned inside out for the moment, I am also going to do the same with the the ends from where I tied my second skein of yarn on. As you can see, my finished band is much sturdier than it was when it was just a very long piece of one long piece of single crochet. And I've already tied off my inner ends, but I did not leave my starting tail. I am actually going to be using that to sew my pom-pom on, so I am leaving that, and I did not weave that end in or cut it off yet. And now for the pom-pom. You can use almost anything to do this. You can use, if you have a 2-inch ruler, you can use that. When I made the purple one, I actually used a deck of cards. For today, though, I actually found this pom-pom maker in my stash, so I'm going to use this to make a nice big pom-pom for my yellow tam. So, I've got the leftover pieces from when I finished off my ends. The short one is from one of the where I joined my yarn in, and then this longer piece is what I had left over from sewing the band down. And basically it's a matter of just wrapping the yarn around whatever it is you are using to just make sure you get the right size and shape. This one has little grooves to help keep it even. I didn't really find they made a huge difference compared to my using just my deck of cards. I am just going to, because I said I wanted to make a giant pom-pom for this one, so I'm just going to use what's left of my yarn, all of it, because the ball is not that big that's left over. So basically I'm just wrapping my pom-pom maker over and over and over again with yarn to start with. Now I'm going to tie off my yarn in the middle. That's what this little short strand here that was waiting is for. So I'm going to knot it as tightly as I can to start with, which I really should be knotting in the center where it'll be easier for me to do this instead of in the edge. So I'm going to tie 2 knots first, and then I am going to cut the pom-pom off of the form. Once the pom-pom is off, I need to style it a little bit, shall we say. I'm going to trim it down, make it look a little bit more even, but before I do that, I'm actually going to put a piece of paper down and trim over the piece of paper instead of my wool ironing pad, because I don't want to be picking wool fuzzies off of my lovely ironing mat if I don't have to. So all I'm going to do is just decide where I want the bottom of my pom-pom to be, and then I am going to, since this is meant to sit flush against the tam, I am not trying to make a round pom-pom, I am just trying to make a semi-spherical pom-pom. So I am going to flatten out one side and push all of the yarn up and away from it. And then I'm just going to take a pair of scissors and trim until I have a shape that I like. This is 100% not an exact science. I am just going for a shape that I like the look of, basically. It's as simple as that. I am losing a little bit of size of the pom-pom, but that's to be expected. And part of it has to do with just the fact that as you keep wrapping more yarn around whatever you're forming the pom-pom around, some of the pieces of yarn are going to be longer no matter what you do. So that's part of the process. And it's okay to trim it down a bunch if you feel like it looks better that way. And now we are at the very last step, which is sewing the pom-pom onto the tam itself. With that tail that I left, I am threading it onto my yarn needle, and then I am just going to sew the pom-pom right over where that magic loop we started with is. So nice and easy. I'm just going through the pom-pom, hoping I catch across the the thread that I knotted around it, but I'm going to sew across it a few times, so it should be good. So I am, for this very first stitch, I am making sure that I go from one side of the center point to the other, and then I am pulling it down to make sure it's sitting flush. And then I'm just going to do a few more stitches trying to go across and around the pom-pom so that I secure it from as many directions as I can get, basically. As you can see, my needle is coming up kind of randomly in the middle. Not a big deal. I'm just going to go back down and through. And then my last few stitches, now that I have it in place from the outside, as you can see, I'm just going across the center each time as I make stitches, trying to make them kind of like the spokes of a wheel would be, just making sure I go across the base of the pom-pom itself as I'm stitching it down a few times. And then once I've done that, I am just going to knot this yarn. As you can see, I'm just about out of yarn, so I'm going to have to rethread my needle. But I'm just going to sew a knot in place. And instead of trying to weave this end in, I'm going to do the nice, easy way. Actually, let me finish my knot first. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, as I said, instead of trying to weave in this end and hide it, I'm just going to come straight out through the pom-pom, and it'll just blend in once I trim it down. And that is the end of the Tam-o'Shanter. If you made it this far, congratulations. Please, like always, send me your photos once you finish them, as you're working on all of that kind of stuff. I want to see what you've made from this series of crochet-along videos. I really do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you had fun making a tam in this really fun and slightly unusual stitch. As you can see, here's my purple one too. And thank you for watching. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe if you aren't already, and if you want to check out my Ko-fi, which is linked below. I will see you all in my next video, which I haven't decided what it'll be, but I will see you soon. Bye!